I would like to welcome you on this nice Sunday morning standoff. I hope you're doing well, and we'll start this session with an excellent presentation about Lazarus supply chain attack and how to prevent attacks. There will be set people speaking about that. Piotr Kalnai and Anton Cherepanov. Over to you, guys.
Anton Cherepanov, and together with Peter Kalnai, we will talk about Lazarus supply chain attack we discovered. We both work as senior malware researchers at ESET, and at ESET we analyze the most complex and most sophisticated threats. I'm based in Slovakia and Peter based in Czech Republic. Here is outline of our talk today. At first, I will describe the supply chain attack I discovered. Then Peter will talk about attribution and malware analysis. So, what is supply chain attack? You might know that supply chain attack is an attack on less secure elements in supply chain network. There are several well-known attacks, and the most known attack is NotPetya attack, when attackers compromised Ukrainian tax software servers and pushed NotPetya malware, the destructive form, from update servers of this software. But today we are going to talk about different supply chain attacks we discovered. Everything started when I discovered this sample. This sample, it was malware signed with a valid certificate that belongs to a US branch of Korean security company. And interesting thing about the sample that it was executed by another South Korean software. So at this point, I was very curious what's going on and started to investigate this case. But before I start, let me explain a bit of context, what's going on. A few years ago, banks in South Korea, they had a problem. The websites of these banks, they would require a lot of software to install on the user side. It was too many different software, some browser plugins, some additional security software for authorization, and so on and so on. So what they come up with solution, this application, this company, Visvera, they made application called Veraport, and this application is designed to install all this additional software that is required by specific websites. And this software is mostly used by banks for internet banking and by government websites in South Korea. That's how this software looks like when it downloads and installs this additional security component. So obviously it's in Korean language because it's used in South Korea, and each website that use the software can have own bundle of the software that will be pushed to users. And let me show the demo how it works. So on this computer, I already have this software installed. I go to some testing website. I click, I want to install all software from this testing websites, and it starts the installation process. This I censored some of parts of the screen because it's some random website I found in internet. It has nothing to do with the attack. It's just demonstration how the software works. So as you can see, minimum user interaction is required in order to start installation process. So you just need to click one button and then launch the software. So if you are owner of a website and you want to support this software, you should deploy on your servers some specific JavaScript. And this JavaScript, it has a lot of settings, but the main settings that we are currently interested in, it's configuration for this report. Configuration is encrypted, not encrypted, encoded with base 64, but when we decode it, it's just XML file with many options. And a good part about this configuration that it is digitally signed with using strong cryptography, RSA. So no one can easily set up own website with this software, or no one can modify existing configuration. Configuration contains list of software and download URLs. Another cool part about this software that it actually verifies digital signature of this additional software. So when it downloads, before executing, it verifies the signature. So signature should be valid. But of course, attackers, they can abuse this mechanism if they can compromise the website. So let's recap how it works. So attacker compromise a website that supports the report with Vera. Then user with already installed Visual Report visit these websites, and then it asks to install this software, and as a final step, the malware is pushed to victim's PC. Let's talk about the payload that was actually pushed via this channel. So this payload that we saw, it's camouflaged as a regular legitimate software that often gets deployed with this software. As you can see, it's two different software. One is Delphina and another one is Magic Line, but these icons and this version info, it actually version info of malware, and it contains fake data. And as I already said, binaries, they must be signed in order to be executed. So far we saw two certificates that malware author used to sign this malware, and interesting part that both of them, they belong to security companies. So what the payload actually does? It's a Timida protected binary, and Timida is a packer or a protector that used to protect binaries from reverse engineering. So it makes reverse engineering harder. It usually used to protect commercial software against piracy. And the payload, what it does, it just downloads. It sends a post request to a specific website, and it downloads additional payload, and it executes it in memory without dropping to the disk. If we open it in IDA, we would see a URL of next page that it uses RC4 encryption algorithm, RC4 keys, and other things like user agent and HTTP options. So everything is hard-coded. And it should be noted that attackers are using compromised websites like this one. And these websites, they belong to different institutions, including government websites. So at this point, I didn't know that it was Lazarus, but I suspected that it was a Lazarus component. So I asked my colleague, Peter Kalnai, who has much more experience in analyzing Lazarus malware than I, to help me in this investigation. And now I invite him to continue this talk.
Yeah, hello. Do you hear me? Okay, so thank you, Anton. Hopefully the setup is all right, and I would like to say some words about Lazarus Group first. But in general, these are three pillars that motivate cyber criminals to perform their malicious operation: financial gain, cyber espionage, and cyber sabotage. Financial gain is basically typical for large botnet operators who would like to monetize their botnets and to get as much profit as possible. Cyber espionage is typical for APT attacks when the attacker wants to gain some advantage against his rival or opponent by acquiring sensitive military or industrial secrets. The same is true for cyber sabotage, but with the difference that the attacker wants to damage their victim. For example, by DDoSing their infrastructure, or shutting down their networks, or by exposing sensitive details from their victims online publicly. So these are three pillars. Let's speak about Lazarus itself in particular. This is an APT actor, so it's advanced, but not in a sense that they would deliver some 0 days with their attacks. We don't see that much. However, they are pretty well organized. Their operational scheme is pretty professional, and they basically have a large tool set. So they are advanced. And basically, they can manage, orchestrate a supply chain attack, which is really not easy. Then they are persistent, which means that they would never give up of their target. They are relentless. But these two are typical for APT attacks. More characteristics is that they are prolific. They choose wide targets, wide spectrum of targets, like military, diplomatic, and almost we can see many of those. Even individuals are targeted sometimes. I would say that they are greedy as well, because we will see in one example that after completing their cyber espionage phase, they would just try to leverage the compromised network for financial gain. and they are merciless. Then they don't leave their networks silently. When their operation is done, they would deploy some kill disk or crypto ransomware to damage the whole network. And I would say they use an eccentric approach in intrusion methods, in encryption, methods that are not widely used, that are really specific for countries they operate, and encryption method they could employ a wide spectra of encryption methods. So they use an eccentric approach. To say something about their tools, their tool set is enormous. In years, we collected hundreds of samples specifically labeled as Lazarus toolset, and they have very wide purpose, and they have covered a wide range of architectures as well. Let's talk about the main infamous campaigns. The first that made headlines worldwide was 2014 Sony Picture Entertainment hack. Sony Picture Entertainment wanted to release a movie that mocked third supreme leader of North Korea. And this was the response for a group of hackers called Guardians of Peace. Nobody knew who they were at that time. And basically, they infiltrated Sony networks and exfiltrated a lot of sensitive data of their employees, that the upcoming movies that Sony planned to publish. And on the picture, you can see the screen of the compromised systems. Those are links for the exfiltrated data publicly. One of the links is called sped-data.zip. And this inspired the detection name because from those days till today, ESET and some more companies detect Lazarus toolset files as NukeSped, Nuke Sony Picture Entertainment disks. Next famous campaigns was Cyber Heist in 2016. Lazarus Group wanted to leverage valid but illegal SWIFT transactions. They wanted to defraud $1 billion in fraudulent transactions. They succeeded in 8% of those transactions. The rest was blocked, but still $81 million is a good heist. The banks that were affected was like in Bangladesh, Vietnam, Philippines, and Africa. Another campaign, watering hole against Polish and Mexican banks. Polish news, Zaufana Trzecia Strona reported about this attack as the most serious cyber attack against Polish infrastructure, including bank sector in history. We analyzed the binaries from this attack, and one thing I wanted to mention, the backdoor incorporated Russian translate words. There's no precise rule how to translate Russian alphabet into Latin alphabet, so that is Russian translate. And experts believe that a native Russian speaker would not translate these words in this way. So in general, this was considered as false flag from Lazarus Group. Another case, 2018, Central America online casino kill disk, like 100 computers contained, of the network contained the damaging tool. But what was the reason behind this attack? It was not that Group Lazarus would like to compete with online casinos commercially. No, the reason is that when they acquire money from these cyber heists, they need to launder that money because they don't want to let those transactions be tracked and blocked eventually. That would spoil their operation. So they use online casinos as in their scheme as a money laundering stage, and that was the reason why they distracted their networks. Wanted to distract their networks because they wanted to clear all the traces of their activity there. Yeah. Operation Interception happened in early 2020. The targets were aerospace and military companies. So basically cyber espionage motivation. Here, I would like to demonstrate the greediness of the Lazarus group, because when they were completed with their cyber espionage, like exfiltrating a lot of sensitive data from those compromised networks, they just wanted to leverage the access to the networks more. So they wanted profit, financial gain. And they do that by so-called business email compromise. So they acted like executive officers and sent emails to employees and tried to get some paid invoices from them to their accounts. Yeah, so financial gain and cyber espionage in one operation. It is generally believed that Group Lazarus is backed by North Korea, DPRK, and the DPRK denied, of course, any connection. However, in publicly or like in our community, it is believed that that is the source of the attacks. And of course, who would be first on the list if not their south neighbor, South Korea? And attacks by Lazarus to this country could be tracked back to 2011, operation so-called 10 Days of Rain. It was a continuous DDoS attacks against infrastructure of South Korea. And this happens even later, like in 2013, it was reported by New York Times, the targets were South Korean banks and media and maybe some more targets. On the left picture here, you can see people struggling with withdrawal of money from ATMs because those ATMs were not functioning. And on the right, you can see a screenshot of an employee of a newspaper agency, operating system not found. It was a disrupted operation against news agencies. So very, very cruel attacks. And I dig on the internet and I realized there are also reports about Lazarus Group in local news. This is just for illustration that group Lazarus attracts attention worldwide. And I chose exactly this because they are cool illustrative photos. I found more on Rosbalt and Gazetaru and more. Let's move to the malware analysis itself. Anton stopped at the initial downloader. I would continue with the chain that continues after this initial stage. In general, the operational scheme is like this. The execution is in a cascade with these three elements. This is a Matryoshka doll. It is a toy that contains one layer inside another. But this is really a simplification. Sometimes dropper drops two dolls at the same time. Sometimes there are more dolls in a chain than three, and so on. And the face of Matryoshka expresses how binaries look from the maliciousness point of view. Like the dropper looks pretty innocent, just a console application without polymorphism, without obfuscation. Its main purpose is to deploy additional stages on victims' computer. Loader is responsible, is more malicious because it could have some persistence in it and it could be protected by Temida. But its main reason is to load the final payload. And this module could be anything from a downloader, a backdoor, a DDoS bot, anything you could imagine that they would need in their operations. So this is how the dropper looked like. On the left, there is a scheme that represented the execution. And on the right, there's IDA Pro screenshots, the compiled source code. It's very, very straightforward, just dropping several files. Two of those were executables and one of those were configuration file. And then it's just the injection into a certain process, in one of the services, and then just storing a registry file name for persistence. Simple as that. Loader was the intermediate product of the cascade, I would just stop by explaining the strange encryption employed. First, they used a very short key. It was just the number 542 to decrypt the payload, and they needed to schedule the key to a larger length. And in that process, they used MD5 hash and an additional transition of the key. However, at one point, they exchanged XOR operation with OR. As a consequence, the key tends to have much more ones than zeros, and this would affect the whole cipher as well. And the proper algorithm, the main algorithm, was a modification of A51. This was a stream cipher introduced in GSM cellular telephones. It was kept secret. It started in 1987, but it was engineered in 1999. And on the table below, you can see how the malware authors changed several constants. So the cipher became something else. What is the consequence of these two modifications or exchanging with XOR and this change of constants is that the whole cipher in many cases degrades to 1 byte XOR, which makes the life of the analysts and reverse engineers of this malware much more easier. This is the first payload. It was another downloader that fingerprinted the victim's environment, and these are parameters that were sent in their post requests, basically standard data about their victim. What was interesting, this downloader contained a strange artifact, a Japanese word. One of the HTTP responses was checked to start with this word. In translation, it meant good morning, good evening in Japanese. And we show this because, and that is the reason why we show those Russian translate. Maybe this could be considered as another false flag from the attackers. And another stage that was found on the compromised network is a remote access tool. And this is a typical TCP backdoor used by Lazarus group in many cases. And this is one of the reasons why we attribute the attack to Lazarus. The other reasons are the whole setup of command and control infrastructure of the attackers in this campaign, and the eccentric methods they employ in encryption and in intrusion methods. And basically, we have found additional clues based on the tools that are employed by Lazarus in the past. So from our perspective, with strong confidence, we attribute this supply chain attack to Lazarus group. So let's conclude our talk with some ideas, with two ideas. To perform a supply chain attack is not easy. It is very advanced. You need to compromise usually well-structured network, but the advantage for the attackers is that they could then leverage their attack or perform their attack more stealthy, because it's very hard to discover such attack. And also, you can compromise more endpoints in the network at the same time. Because compare it with spear phishing email where the outcome is uncertain. Here, the outcome is pretty good for the attackers. And the second thought is that Lazarus group operates very intensively even these days, and we could expect more attacks and the variety of attacks from their group in the future. So that basically this is all from my side. And I would give word to the organizers.
Спасибо, Peter. Спасибо, Anton.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Anton. I have a very simple question, ordinary question. What recommendations would you give to the EBR experts? What recommendations should you provide them to strengthen the security and to minimize the impact of the Lazarus group, a possible penetration of the Lazarus group to the infrastructure they possess. What would be your piece of advice? Thank you.
Наверное, я должен отвечать, да? Раз Петр по-русски не понимает. Значит,
I think I will take this question because Peter does not speak Russian, so I think I should give you just a few pieces of advice. First of all, you just need to reconsider the risk and be in the list of the suppliers who would supply some services as software or services, and pay close attention to that. Second of all, I would recommend you do application control and use verified security solutions. And basically, one of the advice I would like to give is constantly to be on the alert. Be on the alert and look around at what is happening around the world, what attacks we have, because the attackers do not stand still. They keep on developing. They keep on coming up with something new. I think we should be running with double speed. We need to double our speed at our protection. Thank you. We may be expecting questions after the translation after the broadcast is complete. Have a nice day. Thanks very much, and we hope to see you again at PH Day's standoff session. Thank you very much, and goodbye.